This video is brought to you by Lana crying at work for the first time. Okay, let's take this back for a second. So, hi everyone. It's been so long since I posted on this channel because I have just been spending the time grinding it out in the corporate world, getting a lot of great experience, meeting a lot of amazing people, but also part of that comes with a lot of challenges as you climb up the corporate ladder. And one of the challenges that I've been faced with has been reconciling the conservative East Asian upbringing, values that come along with that, against the expectations of the West, of either in the corporate world or just in general who you are as a person. And I thought, you know what? I would like to develop myself as the bold Asian woman that I know that I have inside of me. I can feel that fire, and I know you have inside of you as well, because you can feel that fire. It's probably why you clicked on this video. And I was like, how can I do this? Well, I found two amazing bold Asian women, one of whom in this video is Jeanne Lam. And she's going to talk about her ability to reconcile and finding her own voice between her East Asian upbringing with that of the West. So if you guys are ready to learn about how you can become the bold Asian woman that you know you are, well, keep watching. See you on the other side.
Yeah, when you grow up in a context where when you are commended for achievements, and then the natural reaction is to say, oh, no, nali, nali, right? This is like, oh no, oh no, not my child.
Yeah.
Oh, my child's garbage. Your child is amazing, right? And that's the context you grow up with. So you learn from a young age, oh, okay, we should be very humble, even with our achievements. We should be very humble.
Yeah.
And that is how I operated for most of my career. And I would say, especially early in my career, I didn't advocate for myself. I didn't boast about my accomplishments. I didn't aggressively assert where I needed to in conversations and meetings, because we were taught that that's not how you do it. You do it from the side.
And clapper.
Done.
So we got Jeanne Lam in the house today, and she's gonna help our lovely viewers here, and even myself too, understand how we can be our own advocates, finding our own voice, and ultimately basking in the glory of who we are, like being firm in who we are. You are essentially the poster child of any Asian daughter. You have went to Cornell for your undergrad, Harvard for the MBA. You are the ex-president of Wattpad. You sit on several boards, many startups that you've started, and all for fast-moving tech companies as well. What 700 million? Was that how much?
That was how much Wattpad was acquired for.
Insane. Yeah. So a lot of pressure, I can imagine, on you. But let's just run it all back with how your upbringing came to be, to have driven you to have completed all of these, on the paper, amazing achievements. But, how did this shape you?
Okay, so thank you for amazing accolades. It's always nice to hear, even when you're in your 40s, because we still need it. And I think I would start by saying, let me share a story. I have my Harvard MBA. I'm running a company. I'm connected in all the right scenes now, and I'm flying high on top of the world. The company gets acquired for $700 million by Naver Corporation of Korea. It's an amazing story. And to be a part of that acquisition is why we join startups. And then on the other hand of that is the story that I want to share is there was one night where I walked into my kitchen after work. This was during COVID. So I literally walked 2 minutes, around the house.
Her office.
Yeah, from my office.
Yes.
And I sit down and we're about to have dinner, and I just start bawling. Oh. And my kids are 4 and 6 at the time. And they're sitting there across from me, and they're stunned. And now, whenever people ask my kids, what does your mom do? Their response is, she cries at work. Literally, that's what I'm like, kids, you know that 365 days of the year, I'm pretty happy at work. And there was one day that I cried, and that's absolutely okay. And now they just tell everyone else that I cry at work is what I do for a living. And so
your kids are the most energetic.
They know how to troll me. They know how to troll me. And so I think that's just context for no matter what biography you have and what your LinkedIn profile says, there's such a different side of that story. And my kids get to see that side. And I think it's important for us to recognize that what we end up talking about is so we help others learn from our achievements, but I think it's just as important to understand the context and all of the failures along the way. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, you asked more about the upbringing and the context.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I do have a little bit of a unique story, I think. I'm a American. I was born in California. My family were refugees from, my family immigrated to California to give me a better life. So that's why I was born there. And they were immigrants from Taiwan. And my parents got divorced when I was 2. So I was actually raised by a single dad and his parents, my grandparents, who I'm very close with. I think that has completely changed and shifted and formed who I am as a person. Because when you grow up with grandparents who lived through wars, who went from the highest positions in society, my grandma was like, I've never touched a dish rag. Like literally, she's like, I've never touched a dish rag until I got to Taiwan and we had nothing and we had to beg for scraps. And that was like, those were the stories that I heard. And then to be in a situation where then it was like my dad, who was an engineer and all these things, worked in Saudi Arabia on behalf of the Taiwan government. It was like all these amazing things. And then he gets to America and he's like, I can't do what I want to do. He had to go and get a second degree. He had to leave my mom on the West Coast in order to do that. It was so hard for them. And so they got divorced when I was 2, and I was raised in this very different context, I think. And in that time, for some reason, I was raised by my parent, my dad, as opposed to my mom, which is also unique, right? And so I think I had a lot of like traditional values. One, I think I had a very strong, supportive paternal figure. I'm sure they felt so bad for me that they were like, let's not put too much pressure on her. She doesn't have a mom, right? So like, I didn't grow up in the typical sort of what we perceive as the Chinese way of you have to get straight A's. You have to go play piano. You had to, like, we couldn't even afford that stuff. I never, until I was like 10, I didn't get piano lessons. And I was very,
you said, but we still got it through. Like the piano was definitely
we
still there.
got some piano. And then I was the one who was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so all that being said is like, it was as an immigrant child raised by a single father with grandparents, I think I just had a lot of historical, cultural context that maybe really that definitely shaped who I am as a person. I don't know, you have similar-ish or different-ish experience?
I would say not so much from the single parent perspective, but definitely from the traditional values. Like the whole piece of, well, this is the whole purpose of the video too, of just being brought up where it's, you don't say no to authority, right? You never push back on authority. Your parents, oh, no, no, no. You save face, like you never self-promote. And that's actually one of the reasons why I was thinking about calling you, like outside of, all of this that's going on. It's filming. It's more so about the fact that I am going through, I'm a manager now in mergers and acquisitions, and you can imagine how cutthroat that can be in that world. And in order to, I find, to, go through, whether it's in the corporate world or even in the Western world in general, like you have to be able to defend your case, build your own business case, defend your case, self-promote, and find your own voice in doing that. And I've had challenges in doing that because I was never taught to do that. And my mother, as strong as she was as a human being, she was very, she's just like, be very risk averse. Like stability is definitely number one. And I couldn't envision why.
Yeah,
because
they came here and they had nothing. They needed to foster stability as the number one thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
That actually like influenced a lot of the job choices that I had chosen. I remember we were at a bank, and my parents or my mom was just like, look at how comfortable these tellers are. Like you should just work in the bank and find stability.
Yeah, it's true.
And so I did go down that path, and I figured out that wasn't the culture for myself. And that's why I work currently at the firm that I work at now, obviously with its challenges, but obviously with a lot of the benefits as well.
Right.
So very, very similar in terms of that piece. But I think, because we spoke before, but I think what was interesting is that you didn't have that pressure to do amazing, but you still did amazing nevertheless.
Yeah.
Right. And how and why?
Okay. So I've given this a lot. I've had to like think a lot through why I am the way I am. And especially because when I share with people, I didn't have a mom growing up, and like I'm raised by my dad. Usually people's reaction is like, but you're so normal. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Why? So I've thought a lot about it. And so my family never really, really never pressured me for the grades, for the whatever, for the accolades, in the traditional tiger mom sense, right? What they did really beautifully was tell stories about who they were and who we were. And so from like I remember when I was 5, I'd always ask for stories, and then they would tell stories about like, well, my grandmother's side of the family, she's a close relative of the first president of China, Yuan Shikai. And it's like, and I would hear about how she grew up in the compound and the benevolence that her father bestowed to the staff and to the community and all these things. And then it was closely associated with this incredible Chinese history and all the positive and negative associations depending on your political affiliation with that. But like, to know that was a part of my, family tree. And then on my father's side of the family, going back a billion years, but going back to, I think it's like the 1500s, where we're descendants from an emperor, Emperor Zhu at that time. And so I'm sure he's had like 10,000 kids by now. And so we're very distant relatives. But there's this connections. Yeah, there's this idea of like, there's a whole history that I'm a part of. And so I think as a kid, I always knew I was a part of something bigger. I had no idea at the time what that meant. I didn't think about it on a day-to-day basis. But they didn't push me for grades. I think ultimately I felt I had a responsibility to treasure and to cherish that history, one, and then to like cherish and treasure the sacrifices my dad made and my grandparents made, and then and to know that they gave up everything so that I could do better. What am I going to do with that? Right? And so I really don't think it came up on a day-to-day. And I don't think it came up when I didn't do well on a test that I'd be sad about like my family history and what are they going to say? Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Honor here.
Yeah, my ancestors are shaming me. It's not how I showed up. But I do think that there was this very, very deep fire that was there. And I also think that because it was a fire as opposed to an external force, I think it allowed me to make choices that were a little bit different, a little bit bolder, a little bit non-traditional, because I did go into tech during a time when tech was just starting to really become accepted. The norm was still go be an engineer, go be an investment banker, go into finance. Even when I graduated from Harvard, my mom's like, why don't you go into finance?
They're all waiting for you there.
Like, there's no history of me showing that education, but it was still risky to go into tech at the time. But I had this deeper fire that I think really was like, but I want to go try this thing because I think I can do this better and I'm interested in it.
So your gut was telling you.
Yeah, and then because I didn't have, I think, the traditional, the very traditional upbringing of do this, not that, or so much push, I think it gave me enough freedom that I could go explore. And that's allowed me, I think, to succeed in the areas I have.
I think that's like so respectable about the fact that you're a strong paternal figure and your grandparents had influenced, but they didn't directly like put pressure on what you had to do.
Yeah.
And
actually, I got a funny story about that. So my dad got remarried when I was 13.
Yeah.
And my stepmom was 18 years younger. Go dad, 18 years younger than him. And so she was in the middle generation between me and him.
Okay.
And she actually did an incredible job of knowing how to mold without overbearing.
I see.
And so I want to give an example of that where she would talk about like gossip around other people. Right? Like, oh, so-and-so's blah, 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 and so-and-so's child is doing this. And, did you see what this?
Gossip.
The auntie gossip.
Yeah.
As a kid, I was like, I don't care at all about what the Chen family did or whatever, right? And then now that I have kids, they're 7 and 9, and I ask her for advice. And I'm like, how do you teach kids in a way that's not overbearing? Because I didn't have that, and I appreciate that, and yet set them on the right path. And she's like, why do you think I was gossiping with you all the time? She was like, I was teaching you through telling you about other things, what's appropriate and what's not. I was like, oh, that's the manipulative, light touch, brilliant way of doing it. So now I'm adapting it now.
I love that. And the fact that she knew from the get-go of, the fact that, she although she was your mother, like you see her as your mother,
for sure.
Right? She wasn't in your life for the majority of your young childhood.
Yeah, my developmental years.
Yeah, so kudos to her. Kudos to all your
absolutely.
All your fam. And what about, so you mentioned about the whole, tech industry and taking that risk and, tech
obviously very filled with men. I'm not going to talk about the whole men and women dynamic. We've heard that enough. What I want to hear more about is how you began to advocate for yourself and how you did that, especially with the reconciliation of the, humility and modesty that I was mentioned before in East Asian culture.
Yeah, when you grow up in a context where when you are commended for achievements, and then the natural reaction is to say, oh, no, nali, right? This is like, oh no, not my child.
Yeah.
Oh, my child's garbage. Your child is amazing, right? And that's the context you grew up with. So you learn from a young age, oh, okay, we should be very humble. Even with our achievements, we should be very humble.
Yeah.
And that is how I operated for most of my career. And I would say, especially early in my career, I didn't advocate for myself. I didn't boast about my accomplishments. I didn't aggressively assert where I needed to in conversations and meetings, because we were taught that that's not how you do it. You do it from the side. That's one. And then I think the other piece of it is the deference to authority figures is so real, right? When I would talk back to my family, I remember at dinner, I said something, my grandpa said something, and I kind of went literally was like, right? He slammed his hand down so hard on that table that everything on that table popped up.
Wow.
And that was the lesson of okay, don't talk back to your elders, don't talk back to authority.
Yeah.
I would be a fool to think that didn't carry its way into how I showed up in boardrooms and meeting rooms. Right? Because these are just things that you learn growing up.
Yeah.
And so in the Western I didn't know that, though.
No, it was all just ingrained, unconsciously.
Yeah, right? I had no idea that was different from anyone else.
Yeah.
And so for especially early in my career, I felt confused, less than. I wasn't sure why I wasn't showing up. I was in business school. We were talking about women at work and speaking up, when something goes wrong, harassment, whatever it is. And I remember feeling very confident and being like, it's not easy as a woman to say anything. And I just gave some example. And one of my best friends literally raises her hand in the next comment and was like, I don't understand why women have such a hard time with it. It's so easy, and
because she grew up differently.
She's Bulgarian. Yeah. She's so bold and she's so strong and she's so confident as a human, right? And so it's a different context in which you grow up.
Right.
And I remember in that moment being like, oh, okay, it's a me problem, and not realizing at that point, and I was, already in my late 20s, you realize it wasn't a me problem. It's cultural. It's a whole context.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
So I do think that that's normal to kind of experience that and give permission and grace to yourself to say it's not necessarily you doing something wrong. And a bunch of work has to be done on yourself to understand, was it a me problem or was it a system problem? And so I do remember there was one time, and this is how I started to learn it wasn't a me problem. I remember one time before going into a meeting, it was early on in my career, and my boss at the time pulled me into a room, and I was a new analyst, and he was this, senior manager, and we're about to meet a bunch of partners. I'm super nervous. And he pulls me aside. He goes, listen, I want you to treat everyone in the room like they're your peers. And I was like, okay. I didn't really know what that meant.
How do you see that?
I don't know why he said that. Maybe he could sense that I was a little bit nervous, a little bit green. And so I was like, okay. And after I remember about 2 days working together on a proposal, I found something online that basically showed we were working on a proposal for something that had already been created. And we were spending so many hours putting this together that I raised my hand and I was like, listen, I found something I don't really understand. Can I run it by you? Within a day, they had called the partners, all these things. And it turns out there was a miscommunication to the partner site. And they didn't need this work done at all. And the partner on this project came up to me afterwards and was like, you've just saved us almost $1 million just in time alone because you said something. And I didn't even recognize how important that moment was until then he told me years later when we ran into each other, he's like, I still tell incoming analysts this story so that they know they should say something. And I know I wouldn't have said anything unless Patrick had pulled me aside to give me that permission.
Wow.
So I share that story because I've reflected on it. And it's like, I didn't know, but I needed the permission. And I needed the permission because of the context I grew up where I didn't have the permission to disagree. And so now, when I go into rooms where I may not feel as confident or as whatever, sometimes I ask for the permission. Sometimes I'll just say up front, hey, if I disagree, do you want me to say something? Do you want me to not say something? I don't usually need to do this, but it's a little bit of a hack that I've developed, because I know that that's still little Jenny in the back, sort of still.
Jenny from the block. I just had to.
It's true. I did grow up in Queens, so it is a part of who I am. And so now I try hard to find ways maybe to like build shortcuts that help identify and manage where that context prevents me from being my full self, because we do live in two bifurcated societies as Asian people in a Western context.
There's this thing that I was doing my research on. It's called double consciousness. And it's basically this theory whereby, as racialized minorities, whatever you want to call it, that you are aware of how, when you're out and about, of how society perceives you. And at the same time, you're also shaping your identity, like your own identity, without the idea of how society perceives you.
Right.
So I like it's a very philosophical.
Yeah. So what does one do with it? What do we do with that?
Well, I think at the end of the day, I'm as I'm going through the experiences of growing up as an adult, it's more so just being comfortable with who you are and having that confidence based off of the experience that you've gathered. For me, one of the biggest things that has given me a lot of confidence, yes, is from my career, but also it's just the friends that I'm around. Because in the friends that they would call out, certain traits that they like about you, for example. Right. And you're like, oh, I guess I didn't realize that was something that people like. Maybe that's why people like to be around me. And then you kind of just go from there. Like, you learn what your strengths are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's personally what has helped me. What has helped you build your confidence in like being firm in who you are?
I do. I very much resonate with the importance of people who will give you honest feedback about both what's needs improvement, what's crap about you.
Yeah, that's why I cried at work.
Especially on what's amazing about you. And I think that is a life hack. And I was once accused by a manager of soliciting too much feedback. And I remember being like, now I can't take any of your advice seriously, because you're telling me something that is so core to how I operate and learn about life and myself, that if you're not someone who understands why feedback is valuable, there's only really so much that I want that input. And so I do think that I've been very intentional as well, I think, about getting feedback. And I would say from different sources. So when I became general manager at Wattpad, I remember being like, I want to lead with a capital L. Like, I want to be a big time leader. I didn't know what it meant to be a leader. I was always a manager, but to lead an organization and to help people through really identity shifting change as a company. We went through multiple phases of this. When you're in a growth company, that's what happens. And so I was like, I don't know how to do any of that stuff. And what is my job? Is my job to deliver on the revenue? And so I remember I got a career coach who has been amazing in giving me a framework to understand myself. And what I mean by that is everyone operates differently. So I don't know about you, but I'm someone who needs a lot of information and data for decision making and to feel confident in my decisions. Some people are gut and instinct and fast. And I had to learn that we all operate. It's like, oh, I'm in my 30s and I had to learn this. I had to learn that we all are driven very differently. And I think consulting organizations do a pretty good job of helping you understand aspects of yourself. And I went through a lot of that, but I was so early in my career that I didn't know what to do with it. And so as an example, she put me through a series of tests that helped me understand I'm a very data-driven person. And I'm slower on the uptake, but I'm very fast and confident once I have the information. So I just started to share that with people, right? And I would explain to people, this is what I need. If you're going to come to me with an idea, you might be a gut person. I'm a data person. So come to me with the information I need to make a decision, and I can make it quickly. And then in terms of getting that confidence, I had to drive our revenue efforts. We were 50 million people around the world were using the app at the time.
One of which was my roommate. Can I just say that she wrote a lot on Wattpad?
For
her stories are still there.
Well, Wattpad is. There's some people who may be watching who are already we all know Wattpad. And then there's some people who are Wattpad is just this incredible app that people use to write and read books and stories. And I learned a lot from building that community to understand the value of a safe space. And we can go into that if it's helpful. But you know, when I was trying to figure out what it is to be a general manager, and one of the roles was, I think we have to help the company make more money. I didn't know anything about monetization. I Googled it. I spent a lot of time researching. And then I found other people who had done something like what we were trying to do. And I was just unabashed about calling them and being like, hi, can you help me with this? Can you help me understand? And building my little advisory pool of individuals to help me specifically with that problem.
Yeah.
And then what I learned from that is I can build myself little advisory pools for anything I want. And then I found a bunch of friends who I wanted from a leadership perspective. How do you make hard decisions? How do you communicate complex ideas? What operating models do you do? And we would just, every single month now, we've been doing it for 3 years, and I just found literally 6 of my best friends. And then I was like, this is actually an excuse so that we get to hang out on the phone every single month. And we get to ask each other questions around, well, what's next? What do we want to do with our lives?
Very similar. You have your own thought bubble to help, you know, echo your ideas, is what I'm hearing. How would you say, like, this is all such amazing information. I'm like taking it in, and like as I'm going, I'm basically getting.
Also, flattery goes a very long way with me. So
a coaching session myself, and I hope this can be shared to whoever's viewing this as well, and they can have a lot of takeaways. I know that. Okay, so so you were talking a lot about, again, being in the corporate world, and then the whole piece of Patrick, your manager, senior
shout
manager.
Shout out
to Patrick. Who got you to see things differently. And that's how you began to interact with people differently. Which, by the way, per Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends book, it's literally just like, you just got to see them in a way where they're your friends. And that's how you have conversations, great conversations with people. Anyways, what I'm getting to, though, is when was being a good girl, quote unquote, just no longer cutting it anymore for you? Do you remember like a specific time or a series of events?
I do. Okay, so I do remember, and I'm going to ask you the same question. I do remember being very proud and like walking home and telling my husband about it afterwards. Of one moment where I had pulled one of the most senior executives at the company over for a conversation because he wasn't cutting it. And he was creating all this chaos for the people that reported to him, who were more or less my peers, or there was kind of a peer or strong relational structure.
Right.
And they were complaining to me about it, and they were telling me about it, and it got to the point where I needed to assess it for myself. I saw the interactions, I saw the work wasn't sufficient, and I literally remember pulling him into an office and being like, "How do you think you're doing right now?" And I was like, "How would you grade yourself?" And he was like, "Mediocre." And I remember being like,
sorry, he was your senior? Like
he was senior in title. Definitely senior in title, more or less my peer.
Okay.
But not someone who reported to me. So an authority figure in every way, older, had a lot of experience under his belt.
Right.
And I remember getting so frustrated at what was happening that I felt like I had no choice but to go do that, in the context in which in every other scenario, I would have never done something like that, because I wasn't the senior person in the room. I wasn't the person that he reported to. I didn't feel like I had the right or the permission to do that.
Right.
But I was so frustrated at him, and it had gotten to the point where I needed to say something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I remember when he said that, up until that point, I actually had lost respect for him, which is what I think gave me the permission to say something, because I do care what people think, and I do care about hierarchy, and I do care about authority. And it's still something I work on, and it's still something that shows up. But at that moment, because I no longer cared, and I didn't care how it was perceived, and I didn't care that he was an authority figure, I had the permission to go say something.
How do you stop caring? You have any tips for us?
Oh, I think it's constantly questioning it. Right. At that point, I also had, my colleagues, my peers, we were all at the point where I don't know if I had a choice.
Right.
And I think it helps when you hit a point where you don't have a choice. That's when you kind of stop caring. We needed to move the business forward. So I said, and then when he said that, I gained respect for him again, because I was like, you do recognize it. You do see.
You're aware.
You're aware. And so it was a point for me, though, what I took away from it was I have the capacity to do the hard things, to do the things that are hard for me. For someone else, that would have been an easy conversation. For me, it was hard because of all that cultural context.
Yeah.
And I think my realization was I had the capacity. And why that's important is once you realize, once you've done the hard thing, then you're like, oh, I can do it. And then what was the outcome? Nobody slammed the table down and the chopsticks didn't come up.
It's going to be a quote for this video.
The metaphorical chopsticks didn't bounce off the table. And then it was a matter of, in that moment, being very proud of myself for stepping out of my comfort zone, for overcoming my own insecurities, my own whatevers they are, saying something, and then now really trying to practice it at different opportunities, especially when it's low stakes. Practice it. For someone who doesn't have a filter, they actually have to practice the opposite.
Right.
It's not to change who you are. You're like, you just need more tools in your tool chest for the right moments.
Right.
So for someone who doesn't have filter naturally, they actually have to go and practice that filtering. Well, for someone who's naturally filtered, I have to go and practice and test the waters on saying the thing quickly, what I feel immediately, pushing up against authority figures without hesitation. And that takes practice. But the more that I practice it, and now that I have a lot more confidence in who I am, now that I have the title to go with it, now that I have these accolades to go with it, it is easier.
Right.
But it still takes practice a lot of times. Right.
I can imagine. Because it's also, I know you have a very similar, like probably have a similar question. You said you have a similar question for me too.
Yeah.
But from what I'm hearing from what you're saying is once you get the experience, ultimately, it gets easier. But at the same time, you have to do it strategically when you start off.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. You look for the opportunities. Maybe the stakes are low. Maybe the situation demands it. But you got to look for those opportunities to do it. And then you reflect on yourself and you say, good job, self. You did the thing that was really hard.
A+.
Bing. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's an important part of it. And I think we're at different phases in our career. And until I had more of those, accomplishments and titles and all those things, which is what we all want and seek, it was harder. Right. And you're now you're managing teams. You're seen as an authority figure, but you're still practicing it too. And I want to know how it's showing up for you.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a big learning curve. Like I'm the partner who hired me back, who I have so much respect for. She was just like, you have to be, with the senior manager, she said, like, you are a manager now, so you have to be, careful and in how you show up, right? And that is pressure. It's a lot of pressure. Yeah. But I respect so much of their coaching, and the partner who that I was just mentioning, who hired me back, she was just like, be firm in who you are. I cried to her at work. It was my first time that I cried at work.
That does happen.
Yes. And I remember it was actually a big turning point, because after that, I actually stopped caring a lot more, because I was telling her I didn't want to disappoint you for hiring me back onto the team. Yeah. I don't know if she's ever going to watch this video, but if she does, shout out to you, Ange. But I was just like, hold on a second. Why did I care so much? Like, I care deeply about showing up, and I care deeply about making other people look good.
Yeah.
That's what and maybe that's worked for me until this point.
You don't want to make someone else embarrassed or disappointed.
Yeah. Like an intrinsic driver of mine from culture as well. But the one thing that I remember not being the good girl just didn't cut it anymore, or being the good girl didn't cut it anymore, was needing to push back similar situation for somebody else on the team who was more junior. And I specifically remember we were giving feedback afterwards because we were the client was pushing for more timelines. We were giving feedback to each other afterwards. And he had said, he had come from Africa. And in Africa, it's very focused on community, at least where he came from. And he came here, and it's a very individualistic society compared to where he had come from. And he thought that everybody was like that. Mm-hmm. And he said that, I also remember he said that you changed my view of being here.
That's meaningful.
Yeah. And I was just like, all right. I know that.
Now I know why this is important.
Yes. Yeah. I know that my knowing my strengths is just bring people together.
Yeah.
And just keep playing.
And that's the thing. That's a unique strength. Like, to you, that's normal, because that's who you are when you're your natural self, right? But to recognize that it's a unique strength to bring people together, or a unique strength to make people laugh, or a unique strength to make people comfortable, or a unique strength to be blunt. These are all unique strengths. And I think a lot of the work we have as individuals is on what is our unique strength.
Exactly.
And then when you uncover that, that's what you lean into, and you look for the jobs that lean into that more and you find the opportunities that allow you to leverage that strength.
Yeah.
And I think that it's incredible that you learned that about yourself through this guy.
Yeah, I would say that. And then also from you as well, just like hearing the stories. My last question for you, very important. You have 2 daughters, amazing daughters, because I heard them in the car. They're so passionate. They're so cute. What would you say to your daughters years down the road, or even now that if they're watching?
I would say you're more than enough. And I would say the most important decision you can make is who you choose as your partner. Because I think about, and I wouldn't be here with you today if it weren't for my partner who loves spending time with the kids. And I wouldn't be anywhere near who I am today and do the things that I love, right? I love hanging out with you.
Yes.
And we make the time.
I'm just like tearing up.
We make the time to do that, right?
That.
And I love going to like events where I get to meet new people, and I love all these incredible things. And he allows me to do that because of who he is. And yesterday we were like making inside jokes about something when we were putting the kids to bed, and we were like giggling about it, my husband and I. And my daughter goes, "You guys are so weird." And I looked at her and I was like,
"You cry for work and you guys are weird.
You guys laugh over really dumb jokes and you cry about work all the time, Mommy." That's just who my daughter thinks I am. And she said we were really weird. And I instinctively was like, yeah, find yourself someone who loves the weird that you are, right? Like literally we love each other's weird. And I think that we want to talk about all this stuff about work and how to show up and how to be strong, and how to overcome the good girl and all of these things. It's got to be built on a foundation of how are you able to do that? Whether you choose to be alone or not, that's a choice, right? And that's an important one. But if you're going to be with someone, finding someone who supports you, kiddos, and allows you to be who you are is the most important reason that I am who I am today, and successful and happy. That's what I would leave it with.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you.
I don't know if it's amazing, but it's a perspective.
It's so deep. I'm sure your daughters in the future, they're going to be like, "Wow, Mom."
No, they're going to be like, "Whoa."
And then they're going to be like, "Oh, you were always right."
Yeah, that's true.
Later down the road.
When they're 40, that's what's going to happen. Like how I am today with my mom. Thank you. Oh, this is it.
Thanks so much. Make hugs. Oh my gosh. That was amazing.
Thanks.